Yesterday, the biggest news of the day was, actually, the first biggest news of the day was Zelensky puts forward a 10-point peace plan at the G20 summit. It's the first time Zelensky, in the context of this conflict, has put forward any peace plan. Some people believe, in their minds rightly so, that Zelensky did not initiate this conflict, so therefore he has no obligation, no moral, legal, political obligation to put forward a peace plan. He's the victim of aggression. He has no reason to put forward a peace plan. Other people, who I dare say might understand the conflict a little better, might say this conflict didn't start in 2022. This conflict has been brewing at the very least since 2014 and probably historically a lot earlier. Some people would say that Zelensky ran on a platform of and was elected on the basis of negotiating something of a peace for the disputed territories to the east. For whatever the reason, apparently reneged on that political promise. And as such, whether or not the act of aggression in 2022 came from Russia, some argue that the act of aggression came from Zelensky and not negotiating a peace there, in pursuing NATO membership and in pursuing NATO interests, in pursuing chemical research facilities, according to Newland, that are not biowarfare plants, but research facilities that don't exist but do exist, that might not be funded by the states, that are funded by the states. Some might consider that an act of provocation. This is not to say both sides are equally bad or equally good. Some people have a more in-depth understanding of the conflict. But the big story of the day was the week after the FTX collapse. I'm not connecting the dots, but those two dots you cannot ignore. Two massively cataclysmic events that occur within a week. FTX goes belly up or files for Chapter 11, loses $17 billion of net worth after having funneled hundreds of millions of dollars to Democrat entities. And apparently, potentially, I don't yet understand this nuance of it, to Ukraine, back to the Democrats. Ukraine comes into the picture at some point in the order of hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't understand the nuanced details yet, but when Barnes gets here, maybe we're going to flesh that out a little more. FTX goes belly up the day after the midterms. Everyone's made off with their money like bandits, literally. Hundreds of millions also hacked out of the accounts. Less than a week later, for the first time since this conflict arose in 2022, Zelensky puts together a 10-point peace plan. Hold on, I had the window. That was at the start of the day. That was the big news. Then at the end of the day, the big news was Russia bombed Poland, NATO member, killing 2 civilians in Poland, which would be a violation of international law and an act of aggression that could likely trigger not a nuclear war necessarily, a world war. And this is not like hyperbolic, we're on the verge of World War III anymore. This is now up until now, the conflict was between Ukraine, not a member of NATO, and Russia. And everybody was saying, they're trying to draw NATO members into this so they can make it into a world war where NATO members have a legal obligation to intervene. Some people are saying that, it's a proxy war because the West is financing a war against Russia through Ukraine. Poland is assisting in a war through Ukraine, not directly. So it's not a world war. It's just a proxy world war. The day starts off with Zelensky, for the first time ever, submitting a 10-point peace plan, and then ends up with, allegedly, early rumors were Russia bomb, although they were crafty in the way everyone described it, a Russian missile landing in Poland, killing 2, which could easily and quickly provoke a world war. And if it were for the buffoons on Twitter, all clamoring for world war in a part of the world where they don't live, fought with soldiers who are not their brothers, sisters, or children, or parents, clamoring for world war. Unacceptable. Violation of Section 5, Article 5 of the UN Treaty. Clamoring for it. And I'm sitting there thinking, like in the situation with Assad allegedly using chemical weapons, at a time when, He could do whatever damage he wanted with conventional weapons and not trigger international involvement. What would be the purpose? Zelensky lays out a peace plan, and that evening, Russia bombs Poland. I mean, I couldn't put anything together. It made no sense. And it turns out that it made no sense because it's not exactly what happened. But for cooler heads prevailing, I guess, it wasn't a Russians' act by all accounts. Joe Biden himself had to begrudgingly acknowledge it wasn't Russian. It was likely Ukraine itself. And there's more to this. It was likely Ukraine itself. And then when this news comes out, after people had already taken the position, this is Russia, we've got it, this is now our cue to go into World War III. Well, they have to back it up, backtrack it a little bit. And it's an amazing thing. You see the mental gymnastics in real time. You see the motivated reasoning in real time. When an ally does it, it's an accident. When an enemy does it, it's deliberate. When an ally does it, it's an oversight. When an enemy does it, it's deliberate malice. And this is Disclosed TV. It's not, they've made some bad statements before, like inaccurate statements, but everyone acknowledges it now. And we're going to see something in a second. Poland's president says it's very likely missile blast was from the Ukrainian air defense, calling it an unfortunate accident. It's a thing to have a memory. It's an unfortunate accident. And they know that because it's them by proxy who did this. It's their ally. They know that their allies are true benevolent, would never accidentally kill or target innocent civilians. I mean, when Obama drone bombed the wedding in Yemen, it was an accident. Whereas if anyone else did it, it would have been a war crime. And it was arguably, but not arguably, a war crime when Obama did it. But people have already come to the conclusions. They say, oh, Russia did it. It's a war crime. Oh, shit. Russia didn't do it? It's an unfortunate accident. But I have a memory. And it's a blessing and a curse. This is how Trudeau framed it today. This is from today, 1:09 p.m. Following yesterday's explosion in eastern Poland, I called President Andrzej Duda earlier today. I offered my condolences to the Polish people and reiterated Canada's support for a full investigation. We agreed to keep supporting Ukrainians, even when they accidentally killed Polish civilians. But that's the second part. We agreed. It's a foregone conclusion. We're obviously going to continue supporting our allies, even when they accidentally kill civilians. An explosion? I mean, can you imagine the intellectual dishonesty? You can call it an accidental strike. You can call it an accidental bombing. But an explosion? Like it just happened. Something just exploded. And the thing is, I knew right. I remembered right away. It was not the first time Trudeau had done such a political mental gymnastics maneuver to avoid putting responsibility where it belongs for political reasons. Back in this was in the early days of the pandemic. That's the same one. Hold on. Oh no, this is another point that I was trying to make. Sorry. This is when Putin, I won't put it in quote, when Putin kills civilians, everybody knows it's deliberate targeting. It's not war, and it's not like when the Allies firebombed Dresden to deliberately start firestorms to kill as many civilians as possible. It's not like that. When Putin, in an act of war, kills civilians, it's a war crime. I joined other G7 leaders today to address Russia's missile strikes on Ukraine. We condemn these acts in the strongest possible terms. Indiscriminate attacks on innocent civilian populations constitute a war crime, and we will hold Putin responsible. And we will hold Putin and those responsible to account. War crime. Where's the difference? Other than the fact that you start off on the premise that you will forgive any act of violence. Remember when there were these terrible videos circulating of people doing terrible things in war and torturing prisoners, shooting prisoners, And then the internet justification is, well, I would do the same thing to someone who invaded my country. Whereas on the other side, war crime on the one hand, tolerated and dare say even encouraged on the other. Putin kills innocent civilians in the context of war. It's a war crime. Ukrainians, by all accounts, you could substitute the words. It's an explosion. It just happened. And again, it is not at all to condone one while condemning the other. I'll condemn both. This is war. And it's a war that people have been going out of their way to promote and to continue, and to say there is no reason nobody should negotiate. You're dealing with Hitler. And when Russian soldiers are kneecapped, that's that. You get what you deserve. When Russia, a missile goes off target, kills civilians, war crimes. When Ukraine missiles go off target and kill NATO member civilians in a foreign country that's not engaged in the conflict, it's an explosion. It's an accident. Listen to this, though. And to still try to blame it. To still try to blame it on Russia. Listen to this.
Let me be clear. This is not Ukraine's fault. Russia bears ultimate responsibility as it continues its illegal war against Ukraine. Let me be clear. This is
following that rationale, it incentivizes, or at least it incentivizes through not disincentivizing. Accidents happen, it's Russia's fault. Accidents happen for Russia, Russia's fault. War crime when it happens to Russia, when it happens via the hands of the Ukraine military, war crime for Russia. I mean, that incentivizes some very, very bad thoughts and some potential very bad actions.